The recent bombing at journalist Sigfrido Ranucci's house was in fact a strong message, a form of intimidation, or as Italian authorities put it, a mafia method. Investigators from the anti-mafia division are presently handling the case and treating it as a mafia-style attack with the goal of intimidation rather than a mere act of vandalism. If you look back at the mafia's history, in Italy and more precisely Sicily, journalists were among the targeted and often killed. These pinpointed attacks are widely viewed as a warning to other journalists of the risks of reporting or exposing the mafia. Here are some examples. Palermo crime reporter Mario Francis was exposing links to the Sicilian mafia and politics. And more crucially, he was the first reporter to publish the names of the Corleone bosses. And he even had foresight to predict the Corleonese's push for power within Sicilian Cosa Nostra, as well as report on divisions within the Mafia Commission. On January 26, 1979, Francis was shot 5 times and killed in front of his house by Leo Luca Bagarella, the brother-in-law of Totorina. Journalist Mauro Rostagno was reporting on the mysterious power of the mafia and his infiltration of the political and economic fabric of Trapani. He was also covering the murder trial of boss Benedetto Santapalla, who during a break sent a message to Rostagno that he should say less bullshit about him. On September 26, 1988, Rostagno was shot to death while sitting in his car. Journalist Giancarlo Ciani published an article linking the Camorra and Sicilian boss Totorina, as well as the ongoing Camorra clan wars. On September 23, 1985, Ciani was shot 10 times by a 2-man Camorra hit team. He was parked in his favorite off-top green Citroen Miata. Journalist Giuseppe Fava covered the Sicilian mafia, and it would be his investigations into Cosa Nostra's joint venture in business, specifically Catania-based construction companies, that determined his fate. On January 5, 1984, Fava was sitting in his Renault when he spotted a hit team. He tried to flee, but was hit and killed by 5 bullets. Apparently, boss Benedetto Santapalla ordered his death. Journalist and anti-mafia activist and radio host Giuseppe Impastato began exposing mafia crimes in Cinisi, as well as the area's boss, Gaetano Badalamenti. In 1978, Impastato was a candidate for the Cinisi Council elections. He was killed sometime between May 8th or 9th of 1978, and his body was found in pieces near a Palermo railroad track, and apparently a bomb with TNT was placed underneath him. Journalist and top-notch reporter Mauro Di Mauro investigated and reported on the mafia. He interviewed former mafia members who were cooperating, where he would obtain crucial information. Di Mauro posed a direct threat to the Sicilian mafia and the Italian state. In fact, a high-level meeting took place in Rome, attended by 2 officers from the military intelligence services and high-ranking bosses, Gaetano Badalamenti, Stefano Bottante, and Totorina. According to the Palermo magistrates, the mafia bosses gave a green light to having Di Mauro abducted and neutralized. On September 16, 1970, at about 9:15 p.m., Di Mauro went to visit his daughter, who witnessed him speaking to a few men near her car, and heard one of them say, "Amoni, let's go," and the car sped off, and there was no longer sight of her father. The following morning, Di Mauro's BMW was found abandoned. All signs pointed to Lupara Bianca, the disposing of a body to prevent discovery. The Corleonesi were infamous for this method. Journalist Giuseppe Alfano covered the mafia intensely, even to the point of creating organizational charts of the mafia in Messina, Sicily. He revealed connections between the mafia, business, politicians, and the Freemasons. In addition, he shed light on arms and drug trafficking between the mafia and South American countries, and further began investigating the roots of Masonic lodges in Sicily. On January 8, 1993, Alfano was stopped in his car and shot 3 times and died at the wheel. Journalist Giovanni Spampanato created his downfall after connecting the Sicilian mafia to a murder. On February 25, 1972, Angelo Tomino, a builder and entrepreneur, was murdered. Spampanato covered that murder extensively, which led to Roberto Campria as the suspect. Spampanato also covered the trafficking of archaeological material, weapons and drugs, and the presence of the Mafia in the Sicilian city of Ragusa. On October 27, 1972, Campria shot Spampanato 6 times while he was sitting in his Fiat, killing him instantly. Journalist Cosimo Cristina was writing articles and investigating stories on the links between the Mafia and politics. On May 3, 1960, Cristina left his home but never returned. 2 days later, his body was discovered along the Palermo-Messina railway line. His death was ruled an accident. However, 6 years later, an autopsy was performed, and the findings confirmed that he'd been killed by poisoning. The reasoning behind threatening, attacking, or ultimately killing journalists for doing their work undermines the ability for members of the media to hold those in power to account. The recent bombing at Ranucci's house explicitly proves that point. I've mentioned that Sigfrido Ranucci years ago was the target of an assassination attempt by the Ndrangheta. In 2021, Italian law enforcement heightened protection for Ranucci after learning the Ndrangheta wanted to kill the journalist. According to reports, an imprisoned Ndrangheta drug trafficker was captured on a wired conversation attempting to hire 2 foreign hitmen to kill Ranucci. Why Ranucci was targeted back in 2021 remains unclear. Nonetheless, in the most recent attempt on his life, there are some indications that point at the Ndrangheta as being the prime movers behind it. The bomb detonated at Ranucci's house was on the anniversary of the killing of investigative journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia in Malta on October 16, 2017. Here's a fact. The Ndrangheta are infamous for carrying out murders as ritualized messages. In many instances, a killing is symbolic, and the choosing of an anniversary amplifies that symbolism. In Ranucci's case, he was attacked, or better phrased, an attempt was made on him as a public statement due to the fact that it fell on the anniversary of the Milizia killing, which was also done by a bombing. The Ndrangheta, by carrying out vengeance, striking near or on an anniversary, signals that a vendetta is settled. And more often than not, it takes place in a very public way. For the organization, it's a symbolic closure. Law enforcement views it as a message kill rather than the simple removal of a rival. Italian law enforcement charts past killings as well as their dates so that analysts can identify them and be aware of any returning acts of violence. If you haven't liked this video yet, please take the time now and give it a like, as it helps with YouTube's algorithm. Anyone who'd like to show their appreciation for videos like this, or more importantly, help me to continue making them, you can donate with the Super Thanks icon down below or through the PayPal Cash App links in the video's description. Let me quickly mention my blog, also called Sit Down News, especially for those of you who still enjoy reading. The site can be found at sitdownnews.com and is a paid subscription. Investigators from the Scientific Investigations Group are closely examining the remains of the device that was detonated at Ranucci's house. They're searching for evidence that may help identify the perpetrators. One important angle that investigators are looking into is the coincidence of a Mafia informant who was transferred from one protected location to another on the same day that the explosive was placed at Ranucci's house. That informant was Ranucci's source in his investigation into the collusion between the Italian state's politicians, judges, intelligence services, and the Mafia.